Sarah's mother had been dead for 3 years when her father, Dave, decided to remarry. At first, Sarah was happy. She had been lonely in the house with just her father, and the thought of having a mother figure again filled her with hope. But the moment Regina stepped into their home as Dave's wife, everything changed. It started with small things. "Sarah, why didn't you sweep this floor properly?" Regina asked one evening, her voice sharp. Sarah looked at the clean floor in confusion. "But I just swept it, Ma." Regina's eyes narrowed. "So, I am lying? You are calling me a liar." Before Sarah could defend herself, a hot slap landed on her cheek. Her hands flew to her face as her eyes watered. She had never been slapped before in her life. "Next time, when I say something, you say, 'Yes, Ma,'" Regina said, her voice low and dangerous. That was the moment Sarah knew this woman was not here to love her. She was here to make her life miserable. That night, when Dave came home from work, Regina served him his favorite meal and massaged his shoulders. "How is my daughter?" Dave asked with a smile. Regina sighed and shook her head. "Dave, I don't know how to say this, but Sarah is very rude to me. She even refused to greet me this morning." Dave frowned. "That doesn't sound like Sarah." Regina placed a hand on her chest and sniffed like she was about to cry. "You think I'm lying?" Dave sighed and shook his head. "No, I didn't say that. I'll talk to her." Sarah, who had been watching from the stairs, felt her heart break. She wanted to scream, to tell her father what was really happening. But the look Regina gave her, a look filled with warning and promise of more suffering, kept her silent. That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she realized something. Her stepmother was not just wicked. She was dangerous. And if she wasn't careful, her life would never be the same again. Sarah prayed every day for her father to see the truth. But Regina was an expert at pretending. Each time Dave was around, she would act like the perfect stepmother. She would call Sarah my dear and pretend to care. "Sarah, have you eaten today?" she would ask sweetly, making sure Dave was listening. Sarah, too scared to expose the truth, would just nod. One Saturday, Dave returned home early and saw Sarah scrubbing the bathroom floor. Her hands were raw from washing, her back ached, and her knees were sore. "Regina, why is she doing all this work alone?" he asked, frowning. Regina sighed, shaking her head as if she was tired. "Dave, I have tried. I want her to be responsible. Should I raise a lazy girl?" "But she looks tired." "Let the housemaid do some of it," Dave insisted. Regina rolled her eyes. "Housemaid? Dave, do you know how much we pay that girl? Why should we be wasting money on her when Sarah is here? In our time, we did house chores without complaining." Dave sighed and rubbed his forehead. "That's true." Sarah almost dropped the sponge in shock. Her father, the man who once called her his princess, now believed everything Regina said. That night, as Sarah lay on her bed, she felt like screaming. How could her father be so blind? She had hoped he would at least notice how much weight she had lost or how dark the circles under her eyes had become. But love had made him foolish. The next morning, Regina stood by the dining table, dishing out food for Dave. The rich aroma of jollof rice and fried chicken filled the air. "Sarah, bring me water," she ordered. Sarah, who had been hoping to sit and eat, sighed and went to fetch the water. By the time she returned, her plate was empty. Regina had taken it. "Where's my food?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. Regina smirked. "You were too slow. I gave it to the dog." Sarah's stomach growled. She had been starving since morning. She turned to her father, hoping he would say something, but he just continued eating, oblivious to what had just happened. Sarah clenched her fists. She was truly alone in this house. But things were about to change. One night, Sarah woke up to whispers in the living room. She tiptoed to the door and peeped through a small opening. Regina was talking to a man, a strange, dark-looking man with red beads around his neck. "You must do it quickly," Regina whispered. "I have suffered enough. I want him gone." Sarah's heart pounded. Who were they talking about? The man chuckled. "It will be slow. He will fall sick first, and by the time anyone realizes, he will be gone. Then you will inherit everything." Sarah's eyes widened in horror. They were talking about her father. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth, trying not to make a sound. "You must add a little to his food every day," the man continued. "Make sure he doesn't suspect anything. It will weaken him slowly." Sarah's breath hitched. Regina was poisoning Dave. Her stomach twisted. The same food she had been fighting for, the same food her stepmother had denied her, was a food that was going to kill her father. She turned and rushed back to her room, locking the door behind her. What should she do? If she told Dave, he wouldn't believe her. Regina had already turned him against her. And if Regina found out that she knew the truth? Sarah swallowed hard. She might not live to see the next day. The next morning, Sarah ran to Dave's room. "Daddy, please listen to me," she begged. Dave, who had just woken up, rubbed his eyes. "Sarah, what is it?" She opened her mouth to speak, but then she saw Regina standing by the door, her arms crossed, her eyes burning with silent warning. Sarah swallowed hard. She couldn't say it. If she told her father now, Regina might kill her before she had the chance to prove anything. "It's nothing," Sarah whispered, her heart sinking. Dave sighed and rubbed his head. "Sarah, I don't know what has come over you. Regina is trying her best, but you keep making things difficult." Regina smiled. "Don't worry, dear. I will take care of her." Sarah shivered. Those words were not meant to comfort her. As soon as Dave left for work, Regina grabbed Sarah's arm and dragged her to the kitchen. "What did you hear last night?" she demanded. Sarah kept her lips sealed, refusing to talk. Regina smirked and poured a bowl of scalding hot water on Sarah's feet. Sarah screamed as pain shot through her legs. Tears streamed down her face. "Next time, mind your business," Regina whispered. Sarah limped back to her room, but her fear had turned into something else, anger. Regina had gone too far. Sarah wiped her tears. She would not just sit and watch her father die. She needed a plan. Sarah knew she had to act fast. Regina was already poisoning her father, and if she didn't stop her soon, Dave would die. Lying in her bed that night, Sarah thought hard. She needed proof, something solid to make her father believe her. Regina was too smart, too manipulative. Just telling Dave the truth wouldn't work. She had to show him. The next morning, while Regina was out, Sarah sneaked into her room. She went straight to the wardrobe and rummaged through Regina's things. Her heart pounded in her chest, every second feeling like an eternity. And then she saw it. A small black bottle, carefully wrapped in a cloth. She pulled it out and turned it around in her hands. The label was worn out, but she could make out some words. "For slow poisoning. Use with caution." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the proof she needed. Just as she was about to leave, the door creaked open. Regina stood there, her face dark with anger. "You shouldn't have done that, Sarah," she said, stepping forward. Sarah's fingers tightened around the bottle. She was trapped. Regina moved closer, her voice low and menacing. "Do you think you can stop me? I have come too far." Sarah's mind raced. She had to get out of there. She threw the bottle at Regina's feet and ran past her, dashing straight to the living room. She grabbed her father's phone from the table and ran out of the house, her bare feet hitting the pavement as she sprinted down the street. She needed help, and she needed it now. Sarah ran to the neighborhood pharmacist. She had to be sure. "Sir, please," she gasped, placing the bottle on the counter. "Can you tell me what this is?" The pharmacist frowned as he examined the bottle. His eyes darkened. "Where did you get this?" Sarah hesitated, then said, "Someone has been using it." He shook his head. "This is a very dangerous poison, a slow killer. If someone takes it for weeks, their organs will start failing. They will look sick, but it will be too late by the time anyone figures it out." Sarah felt like she was going to faint. Her father had been eating Regina's food for weeks. She snatched the bottle back and ran home. She prayed she wasn't too late. As she entered the house, she saw Regina serving Dave his food. The plate was steaming hot, a smug smile on her lips. Sarah lunged forward and slapped the plate out of Dave's hands. "Sarah!" Dave shouted. Regina gasped. "What is wrong with this girl?" Sarah held up the bottle. "Daddy, don't eat that food. Regina has been poisoning you." Silence. Dave frowned. "Sarah, what kind of nonsense is this?" It's not nonsense. Sarah cried. Take this bottle to the hospital. They will check it and confirm. That's why you've been feeling weak. That's why you've been sick. Regina laughed, folding her arms. Dave, you see? I told you this girl hates me. Now she's making up stories. Sarah turned to her father desperately. Daddy, please, just check. If I'm lying, then I'll leave this house forever. Dave hesitated, looking at the bottle in Sarah's hands. Something in his daughter's eyes made him pause. Fine, he said. We're going to the hospital. Regina's face turned pale. Dave sat in the doctor's office, his heart pounding. So, the doctor said after checking the results, your daughter saved your life. You have been ingesting poison in small amounts. If it had continued for another month, you would have died. Dave felt his whole world shatter. He turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with regret. My child, I am so sorry. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I tried to tell you, Daddy. Dave's hands clenched into fists. Rage boiled inside him. Regina had lied to him, manipulated him, almost killed him, and he had let her do it. We have to go home, he said, standing up. This woman will not get away with this. When Dave and Sarah entered the house, Regina was already packing her bags. You are finished, Regina. Dave roared. Regina jumped, her eyes wide. Dave, listen, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything, Dave interrupted. The doctor confirmed it. You have been poisoning me. Regina backed away. It's not true. Sarah is lying. The police will decide that, Dave said coldly. As if on cue, 2 police officers walked into the house. Regina let out a scream. No, Dave, please. I love you. Dave shook his head, disgusted. You don't know what love is. The officers grabbed Regina. She fought and kicked, but they dragged her away. Her screams echoed through the house as she was taken away forever. Sarah let out a long breath, finally free. With Regina gone, the house felt lighter. Peace returned. Dave made it his mission to make up for all the pain he had caused Sarah. One evening, as they sat in the garden, Dave took her hands in his. My child, I failed you. I let a stranger come between us, and I let you suffer. Can you ever forgive me? Sarah smiled through her tears. You are my father. I will always forgive you. Dave pulled her into a tight hug. I promise you, from today, no one will ever hurt you again. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt safe. She had won. The wicked stepmother was gone. Justice had been served. And finally, she was free.